Hello, I'm Dorie Klissas, and this is the Pitchable Story. Each episode, we highlight some of the most pitchable stories and share insights to help you craft your own. My guest is Ellis Verdi of DeVito Verdi, an advertising agency based in New York City. Ellis co founded the agency in 1993, which has since won awards, many, to the point where they've been displayed in supermarket carts near the elevators of the office. Ellis, thank you for joining me today. Now, it's great to have you. I mean, do you always work on your creative endeavors?
I'm always working on some level, yes. We all have our when we walk in the park or when we do nothing, we kind of always think about stuff. I think I'm always thinking about trying to find solutions for clients that are original and different and attention getting. And you need to walk in the park sometimes to find those things. They don't come to you immediately until you do some of that sort of other things in your life, and then sometimes you can get those ideas that come in. And I have so many other people doing the same thing that it's great to even interact with them during the day or during the week.
Well, when you have a client and you want to tell their story, how do you get to the heart of what they're made of so you can actually tell that story? What kind of process is that?
It's a thoughtful process. It's intellectual. We have to study the business. We get all the research that we possibly can. We always spend a lot of time talking to people that have something to do with the product or service that we're talking about. And really, most of all, it's our job to find the right voice for this product and service. So the people that are actually close to it become really important, and we try to talk to them as much as we can and dig into the challenges that they face in their business. So it's really a research and a thoughtful process where we also spend a lot of time exchanging our findings with each other. So because everybody sees things a little differently, which is good.
You have a lot of different folks that are writing and part of the creative. That's important. But throughout your entire career, you've had sort of a bit of a New York type of attitude with your ads. Where did you get the courage to have that? Or is it just because you're from New York?
Well, there's certain characteristics. Yes, I grew up in New York. I went to public school. I am a product of New York City. I did spend some time in Europe, but most of my time in New York in the public school and various other neighborhoods, West Side, East Side. Um, I I think there are characteristics of New Yorkers that I think has helped me. First of all, the challenge of growing up in New York and going to public schools and and being in an environment that wasn't easy in many was a good thing because you learn how to survival in New York as a kid, and growing up in New York is a good thing. It gives you the challenges in which you learn from, and those challenges and then your learning really pays dividends later on in life. The second thing is New York is kind of a straight talking environment. I mean, if you had to characterize a New Yorker, you'd say, yeah, they tell it like it is. They talk straight. And it's part of that truthful kind of talking straight that works not just in New York, it works in advertising, and it works in advertising across the country. So I think that that characteristic built into how we approach advertising is national in nature, even though it's New York specific in some ways.
But I would think that the New York attitude wouldn't play well in the rest of the country.
It's a good point in the sense that New York attitude from the standpoint of maybe the attitude part, but what does stand out throughout the country is communicating or revealing truth. And New Yorkers are good at that. They tell you like it is. And revealing truth is really the essence of the best advertising, in my opinion, anyway, no matter what part of the country you're in. Which means that you're essentially taking stuff that's in the back of your mind and bringing it to the front. You sort of had this idea as a person, and then all of a sudden you read the ad and say, yeah, that's true. That really is true. I get it. It's a little bit like you hear a joke, a great joke. You go to a comedy club and you hear a great joke, and you laugh because you'd kind of know it's truthful, but you're laughing because, yeah, that's right. You say to yourself, yeah, that's right. That makes sense. I get it. And I think we're in the same business of revealing truth. The best ads reveal truth. Uh, they don't skirt the issue as much as I think a lot of people think they should, but they shouldn't.
Well, the truth is sometimes hard to get to for the normal person. I mean, if you're telling your story, your pitchable story, some people will tell you something crazy or not really right on. How do you work with your clients to get them to tell you what the truth is? Because sometimes they might not know it.
That's a good question, Dory, because they often don't. We have a saying in the agency: we give clients not what they ask for, but what they need. And the reason we say that is because they can't really often know what to ask for. We have to ferret it out. We have to get it out of them. We have to use our judgment and our techniques and our ability and capability to know what to say at the other side by asking the right questions and figuring it out. Um, the next step, of course, is to take what we figured out and put it into real advertising. Usually, when we've done a great job, we show this advertising, and the client goes, "Yeah, I get that. That's cool. That makes sense to me. That's who we are." I remember examples of, at Mount Sinai when the ads were so good, people, without asking me, put it on their walls. They put it on their walls all over Mount Sinai. The doctors did, and everybody, because they felt it was a good representation of who they were. And that's ultimately a great sort of testament to our ability to find that truth and then reveal it.
Well, let's talk about some of the New York type ads. There was a timeout ad where you said, where to go.
We said, "Welcome to New York. Now get out." Time Out was all about getting out and finding things to do in New York. It still exists as a product to learn about what you could do in New York. It was originated in England, and here these British folks were coming to New York with their product, and they had to feel like New York, right? I mean, that was when they first introduced, so they of course hired us to some extent. That made sense, and we told it like it was. Again, we revealed the New York. In this case, we definitely revealed the New York in us, and it was an enormously successful introduction, and was talked about and continues to be a successful product. We did a lot of ads like that, and we had them posted all around. Part of New York is really, if you think about some of those products and services just in New York, you have to be part of the fabric of New York. So you have to look at subways and other kinds of places to place these ads that makes people feel like it's the local furniture in a way. It's the local products that it immediately localizes the idea because it's where you find that idea being expressed. If you go down in a subway, it's not like everybody goes there to advertise. So it was helpful to have the right media choices for timeout. Yeah, that was a good example. And you know, I guess magazines. We did a lot of media over the years. We did New York Magazine, um, Esquire magazine. They were all pretty infamous campaigns, and they uh, they have a challenge sometimes in general to communicate. Uh, Media properties do because the instinct is always, we reach 10,000 people 20 times a day, that kind of stuff. And you really want to instead talk about the essence of what makes that particular medium so important to people to utilize. And that's a learning process on the part of the client who has to also develop an understanding of what good advertising is. We're blessed to also have a lot of great clients, and we couldn't do our work without the clients being great. It's just part of the formula as well.
And sometimes I know you don't ask for permission. The New York Magazine ads, you featured Giuliani and put them on a bus and didn't ask his permission, but they sued you and you won the suit. So tell me a
It's
little
uh,
bit about that.
it's we've had a lot. We've had Dory. We've had so many incidents, and really, all we're doing is we're not looking for the fight. We never were. We're always just trying to do the most powerful ads we can do. I feel we do that today too. We just look for the most powerful, and sometimes when you do really strong ads, there's going to be someone who's not so happy about it. And we've had a number of those occasions over the years. And another occasion you're mentioning, of course, is when Giuliani was mayor, and we said something about him on the side of a bus for New York Magazine. Of course, New York Magazine is a publication, so it's allowed to talk about Giuliani, of course. And it did it in advertising, and he just decided to take it down. He just said, I'm the mayor. I don't have to see my name on the side of a bus. I'll take it down. Well, the truth is that it became the one of the largest First Amendment cases in advertising history at that moment, because he doesn't have the right to take that step in a public transportation environment, which that is, and just take something down without at least consulting with the people who put it up.
What about cause marketing? You recently did a campaign for Live on New York.
Very, very strong communications, and comes from a real place, an emotional place. And these folks at Live On are doing such great work. When we first took on the assignment, which we do often with these causes, is you end up feeling it, not just hearing about it. And I think we all felt it. We all sort of, everybody in the agency sort of um, didn't just intellectualize at this point. They really felt the need to save lives. And that helps very much. When you're doing advertising, if something's meaningful to you, no matter what it is, you automatically work on weekends. You take those walks in the park and you think about it. You try to associate things that you didn't associate before, and it becomes a little bit part of your life while you're thinking about it. And you're talking to people about it and you're getting reactions, and it's an ongoing process to try to develop the right kind of but when something is meaningful, it all of a sudden becomes a higher percentage of what you're doing in your day to day. So, and that could be meaningful in a lot of ways. And meaningful, by the way, to an agency like ours is really the work product. If we can put a work product out there that does something positive in the world, we feel it's meaningful. Meaningful for us is not, the income we get from the client, or it's really, can we do something special, different, and helpful in these cases? And that's really what drove us on the Live On assignment.
Right, and Live On New York is an organ donor procurement network for the New York City, Long Island area, and some of Westchester County. So, a great cause. You've done some other cause marketing, supporting women's right for abortion. Tell me a little bit about that.
Um, yeah, for a while, I would say that we were the kind of the largest agency in the country. I mean, the agency in the country is doing the largest amount of work in this area. I also want to just say before I get into it is that we never really had a political stance, but we took on causes that were meaningful over the years, and that was one at the time that was meaningful. Two different organizations used our services. One was an organization called PEP, which I found to be the most interesting. I mean, all of these clients are so interesting, and this one was particularly interesting. On the board of directors of this organization called PEP were women who were the original fighters for this cause. So much so that some of them appeared on websites that had them pointed out as people that we have to get rid of, believe it or not. And that's how important these people were to the cause at the time. And they're names that are very well known across all the greatest organizations in that field, including NARAL and so on. So it was a very interesting board, a very special kind of group of people. And I go from one client to the next with learning so much, and they taught me so much. But on the other side of it, we did we worked for Planned Parenthood in New York, and I did probably my most admired ad. So we did as an agency, probably the one that I liked the most of, well, maybe one of ten ads I liked the most. And the ad was it was the first time that a condom was actually opened up on television. So it had never been opened up on television, the condom. It had always been shown in its package and thing.
How did they allow you to do
Well,
that?
so we opened up the condom, but here's the kicker. The line was, it's easier than putting on a diaper. And so with the line and that visual of it opening up, it made the point that it's important to use condoms in trying to, obviously for whatever medical reasons or whatever reasons you need to use. Um, I I think that that's such a simple idea, and we did it as a 15-second commercial, and its simplicity and power is pretty strong. And how did they get it on? It didn't go on air in many parts of the country, but we trafficked it nationally in so many parts that we had enough people put it on air to make something out of it. But most people did not put it on air, but some did. So the some did was what broke the ice.
And in terms of other political advertising, how much have you done? You've worked with Hillary Clinton.
We've done, so as I said, we're both, by the way, we also did, I'll tell you a little bit about that, but we also did the Department of Defense, and we did some great ads for the Department of Defense as we were in Iraq at the time. And I think some of our better work was for that too, to make the troops feel comfortable. On the Hillary Clinton side, that was an amazing piece of history for us. We pitched it in the White House. Now you have to understand, this is some kid from New York growing up, and all of a sudden I'm invited to the White House to pitch the next campaign with, Bill Clinton and everybody else is there, and there I am pitching away, and we get the business, which was amazing. We had to pinch ourselves leaving. There's all kinds of stories that go along with this, but the they loved our work. They loved all the work that they saw and from the past, and also felt that we could help them. And Hillary, being the wife of and not the senator that she wanted to be, and from people's, needed probably an advertising agency that could do something that was a little different, unique, and actually knew New York. So because she's running in New York, even though she's not a New Yorker, which by the way has some history. Kennedy had the same situation, but there is a uh, there is a political kind of way of handling advertising that we learned a lot about. So much so that we opened up a division after that that did political advertising. We had 6 Senate races, we had a mayoral race, and we were into the politics. We closed that down a long time ago, but there is a world where we learned a lot about a kind of advertising world that is very different than any other world that exists in advertising. It's very fast. It's really smart people thinking on their feet constantly. It's being able to deal with a group of people and being able to interact comfortably with a lot of other people and personalities and egos. All of that experience is just terrific.
You mean in the political arena, you're saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It was just a very different way of looking at it. I recommend to everybody to try it because it tests your marketing ability like nothing else you've ever done.
Well, you've also done a lot of retail. You work with Daffy's, and the idea was that they had great clothes for a
Less money.
reasonable
Yeah,
with less
yeah.
money, and you had a straight jacket in one of your ads saying if you're going to spend over $400 on a dress shirt, you may need a straight jacket, and that created a lot of controversy.
Oh my God, I would say that all of this controversy helped to some extent in viewing this agency as doing strong advertising, strong conceptual work. But that one kind of started the rest of them in a way that I can't even. It's such a big story. It's such a big story because basically we did this ad, and we were attacked by the Alliance for the Mentally Ill, a very strong Washington group at the time, and they wanted to sue us. They tried to claim they were going to sue us. They tried to get to the industry. They got the Human Rights Division in New York City after us. We eventually prevailed, and the sales of the business were so strong because the awareness was so high, and that also taught us something about when you sometimes do very strong ads. I've said before, there could be a reaction, and there usually is some reaction. Not necessarily, and I've always wondered why that was. Yes, maybe the cause, or maybe what we're saying bothers people, but really, if I tell something truthful to somebody, or reveal some truth, or say something in a way that affects them, they're going to react. Now, often most of the reaction is positive for the business, but there are going to be some people that don't want to be touched that way. They don't want to be told something or see something that might be truthful. And part of that feeling is probably some of the sort of reaction to some of these ads that we do over the course of our years in the business. I'm going to put, we talked about the condom ad. We talked about but I'm going to put from Mount Sinai, the Patricia Pure ad in the mix as one of my favorite ads. It was in the first campaign that we came up with that. And the reason we took on Mount Sinai, which is a hospital account, is also very important in the story because for years, we were doing very funny, outrageous. We were always tagged as kind of the, bad boys in a way. And we were doing that for a long time. And then we got into cause related stuff and we found that, it's interesting. We could do stuff that's kind of serious and meaningful, but we haven't done kind of emotional work. We hadn't done that kind of work. And so when Sinai was kind of looking, I said, this is a great opportunity. Now, most people would shy away from doing hospital advertising in this business. It isn't considered sort of a place to do work because it's an institution. There's usually a lot of politics related to it. There's a lot of inherent challenges for it. So most people would run away from it. We ran to it and said, you know what, let's do something special. But it is one of my favorite ads that we ever did in the business, one of the top 10. And it was, in my view, it was successful for Mount Sinai too.
Well, I had the pleasure of working with you at Mount Sinai for several of my years there. And I worked with you directly. You taught me everything I know about advertising. And
Sure.
we came up with a hospital you can choose, can make all the difference in the world, sort of as a campaign. And we came up with that in a meeting with the CEO right on the spot. And that was sort of because we were thinking about so many things, it just sort of blossomed there. But that's probably unusual that it happens just right then and there.
Um, I have to, yeah, I have to say that the CEO, Ken Davis was a terrific client too. I know that people might not understand that, but there is a very strong sense of advertising instinctive to him. He really did know what he knew, and he didn't, and he went to his instincts in order to view work. And that is really good for an agency. So if you went to a meeting with him, as you know, he would say, nah, yeah, yeah, no, yes. And that's because he's reacting from his heart. And always some of the best reactions come from people who use their instincts and don't over intellectualize. He was very good with that. When I interviewed him to start with at Sinai, he was not in the position he was in, and I said to the folks internally, I said that was the best interview I had. It really was. It was, and he was just a psychiatrist or head of psychiatry, what I forget what he said, and then he became head of the hospital, as you know. But when I talked to him, I thought he was just fantastic, and so I cherish his input and involvement in the process because nothing would have happened without him.
Yes, yeah, he was terrific in our meetings and with the work. And I remember you came up with an ad for our partnership with the U.S. Open, and it was the hospital that keeps tennis players out of the hospital. And he liked that, loved that right away. And
I think the best one in that for me was we put a bandage around the handle of a tennis racket. And it shows everybody that you can do a concept that's not just in writing, that it's a visual concept, it's a visual idea. It said everything you needed to say because of our association with tennis that it looked like it was wrapped like your leg is wrapped if you have an accident or something like that with the bandage. It was a perfect kind of visual. The other one that's a perfect visual in the Sinai it was the baseball with the stitches that were half the stitches, minimally invasive sports surgery. That was again a visual use, a visual device to communicate at a level that sometimes we do with copy, but that was visually arresting and successful at the time.
Well, the story with the little wrap on the tennis racket was you had given that to me before I went out to the Aspen Ideas Festival to be with that CEO Ken Davis, and I had showed it to him and said, you know, what do you think of this? And he goes, no, I don't like it. And then you were like so committed to it, and you're like, what happened out there in Aspen, Dorie? And then we came back to New York. And we were in a meeting, and you showed it to him. He said, "I love this." So there's got to be a little bit of showmanship that you folks in the agency world have, or a way of presenting that can go over better than the mere mortal like I was.
I don't know if it was the style, Dory. I have to say that there was something about my relationship with him that might have played a role in this. Is I think that over time he developed trust in us, and I actually developed a lot of trust in his judgment. And that mutual trust is probably what got us over the that, getting that ad approved. I think that that plays such a big role in all kinds of relationships in this business. Every one of the best advertisements comes out of some relationship and some trusting one, that is critical, as it does with Live On and other kinds of, as mutual respect is important in this business. It really is. That doesn't mean I'm always right, and it doesn't mean he's always right, but I think we both know that. And so both knowing that makes a good client relationship.
And another ad we did together during that time was if our beds are filled, we failed, and that was very courageous. And Lenny Aitchen was the chief marketing communications officer at the time. You know, what did you think about them having the courage to go out with that in terms of their business being fee for service, and you coming focusing on a concept with them that was going to be the future of medicine?
We were working very, very hard, and at the time, I had a lot of people talk to me about the future of medicine, not just Ken at that time, but a lot of people that played a very big role in my understanding of the future of medicine. Obviously, it's a vision at the time; it wasn't already carved out yet, and um, we wanted to do something that was incredibly timely on that subject. We wanted to do something that was meaningful and timely. And I think the strength of that ad was when it was released. I think today it's a good ad, and if people would say, but the fact that it was released just at that moment when there was so much conversation and discussion about how medicine has got to change, that it became viral immediately. People were telling me about this ad. There wasn't a hospital in the country that wasn't talking to me about the ad. It thought it was just at a perfect moment. Sometimes advertising has its moments, it has its timeliness, and that was a good example of something that was a perfect timing. And it was very simple, it was straightforward, and it was also courageous on the part of the organization to, as you said, to take on that message. I think Mount Sinai got a lot of kudos for being courageous, right? Because they were people felt like, wow, Sinai really said it like it is, and that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to give voice to something that made Sinai feel like they are in the forefront. They are saying something important.
Yes, it was covered in the healthcare trade, so definitely on the cutting edge of what was going on in that time. And how did you get involved with healthcare marketing? Was it Mount Sinai your first healthcare client?
Mount Sinai was really, and our business is really client directed. But I have to say that it was always in our history to prove that we can do great things. I still feel like I'm an underdog. I feel like I have to prove something to myself, to the clients that we work with. It's the nature of trying to prove to ourselves that we could do better work than the big guys or other people. And it's that drives us. So when we were faced with saying we got to get some serious work on our portfolio, and Mount Sinai came to us, we wanted to prove something. We wanted to prove something not just to Sinai, but to ourselves. And so that's what got us involved in hospital. I found that the other side with Ken Davis, a terrific client. But I also realized the challenges to that relationship of hospital marketing. And I would say it's one of the most challenged environments of all, because we work in packaged goods, financial services, many different, today we've had many different experiences. And I still think it has, hospital advertising has some of the bigger challenges on so many levels. And so we cherish that, we enjoy that, and we are good at it. So that's something that we continue to push in our portfolio because we think we're really good at it.
Well, when you get these clients, do you ever think back to your time when you were opening your agency from your apartment and cold calling people every day? I mean, what has this odyssey been like for you to know you made it happen?
Um, it's hard to, it's a good, I appreciate the question. I am proud of what we did, but I'm always feeling like we haven't done enough. So on both sides of that, when I look back, I do feel like, oh my God, I can't believe I had these meetings and these people and those ads and the business was successful. And after 38 years or whatever in the business, I can't believe we still, the lights are still on, and most of these agencies have either been bought out or closed or whatever, but we still have a very strong DNA, and that's what kind of drives me day to day. So when you have a strong DNA, you know exactly what's right, what's wrong, how strong and how you should do ads, and what makes a good ad from a bad. When you have that strength built into the organization and yourself, you basically just go to day, as I did for 38 years, and go to the next challenge. And so we don't look back that much, but we do feel like there's always another challenge around the corner. I just did for the first time I did advertising for an education place. So there's a lot of firsts. We never did organ transplant advertising until we did the ones we just did with you guys. We never did a higher education until we just last year took on a big higher education assignment. It's always those firsts that kind of excite us also more than anything.
Well, how is the business changing? It sounds like you're going to keep going and finding new endeavors and new areas to promote. And but what about AI? How has it affected the business?
I think that that's a great question, and we have added many kind of capabilities over the years. So we have a chief digital officer, we have a chief experience officer. These are jobs that just didn't have titles or places in 20, 30 years ago, and they are involved in all of. And AI, by the way, is used throughout our creative department because we don't operate as quickly and efficiently without having some of that support. It does not, AI does not create a single great concept. I haven't seen one. I keep looking for one. People show me things. I haven't seen it. It doesn't create the concept, but it may allow you to do it more efficiently. It may allow you to do visuals that you couldn't do otherwise in 10 minutes. It might allow you to, but you have to have the idea from the get-go. The idea is not going to come from AI. So it's a terrific tool, as is most of what's going on in the world of digital. There are many great tools, and you'd probably know, Cam, there's many tools out there, and they're all great tools, but that's what they are, tools. And I think that the great thing about digital is it takes away some of the slogging and boring aspects of the business, and it allows it to be done efficiently with less of a slog and gives you more time and capacity to do the ideas. So we allows us to provide more focus on the core of what we do, and ideas are always going to be necessary. Modern digital is not a strategy. The strategy and the thinking and the creativity has got to exist, and those tools have to be part of the formula for getting the stuff out and getting it ready, and also maximizing your ability to do what you want to do. So those tools are great, but they don't take the place of.
But digital is a reality for marketers, and I really appreciate the fact that you say the idea always has to be there. Digital is an outlet, a place to put your ads. So Do you create ads specifically for digital?
Yes, so we have a great, I mean, today, digital advertising is a high percentage of volume, no matter where you go. So it, of course, becomes very much, but still, ideas in digital are very important. Otherwise, this stuff doesn't work. When you test it, you see side by side that certain ideas do better than others. Why? Because there's some learning there that we need to understand about which ideas. I would say that what's interesting is where are we going from here? And where we're going is to a balanced approach. It's been shown recently, the example with Nike, for example, that went to total performance marketing, realized they made a huge mistake. So they went back just recently, they moved way back to saying, oh, we've got to do top of funnel, we have to do awareness advertising, we have to go back because brand saliency has decreased, and that's been shown, we've done charts on that, has decreased as performance marketing has gone up. That doesn't mean that it's one or the other. This is one of those examples of and there's a famous, story about how people in marketing always say, is it this or that? No, very often it's and if it's an they somebody I forget the quote. It's like the tyranny of or, I think, is really what people talk about. It and is a lot more the subject matter today, and it's about balance. So what is the balance? I mean, some brands are typically just purchased online or whatever. We have a client that's in the financial services, and they almost everything is done online. They purchase it. It's mostly so. Therefore, we don't have a very robust top of funnel. But when you have an institution like a hospital, you really need both. You need to be able to communicate to the people who are making big decisions or recommendations to a patient. Hey, you should go to Mount Sinai. No, you should go to Presby. No, you should go here. So we need to be able to construct a mechanism to be able to push them in one direction or the other, and that's usually top of funnel, not just bottom funnel. So it's a combination and a balance that's the answer, not one or the other.
Yeah, and the one question we used to get, working in healthcare is why do hospitals have to advertise? And I think you're the one who came up with the best answer I heard about because it brings the conversation, doctor, patient, they talk about this, right? So, what's your philosophy about the reason for healthcare marketing?
So that's a very good question. Overall, it's always challenged. The dollar spent on everything that hospitals do is always under scrutiny, and where they spend the money and so on. But there is something pretty important here in the top of funnel and the ability to make a decision. We see it in drug advertising, right? We know that when drug advertising goes out, it does influence people to ask for that drug, and it influences the doctor to be able to communicate why that drug is good or bad. And it's not a negative. In most cases, it could be a positive because people get higher awareness about it. There's arguments on the other side of it too, but it does play a role in hospital advertising in a similar way. There's going to be a moment when a patient meets a doctor, and it's usually referring when it comes to most of the volume of business in cancer and heart. That's where the volume of business is, let's say. And in those kind of very serious areas, you aren't making a decision just by looking on Google. You as a patient have been, you're unfortunately have a cancer diagnosis. You're going to ask some pretty important people what you should do about that. Now, in that conversation with those people of what to do next, there's a means to influence where that goes. So, by advertising, for example, that Sinai is the best at this particular aspect, or Memorial Sloan Kettering, whatever, you create a predisposition in that conversation. So at the end of that conversation, it's more likely that the one that advertises actually gets more of the referrals than the one that doesn't. And that's because it influences the patient to ask, oh, what about that one? I just saw a commercial. And then the doctor says, oh, yeah, that, is because of they're really good at it. So that conversation, which is happening daily, all the time among people in the know, could be influenced, and that's where marketing plays an important role, especially on the higher volume and highest paid part of the business of hospital marketing.
Fascinating. We'll talk a little bit as we end about the future of the business in terms of, what do you want to share with young people coming along in the business, or a big lesson you want to share with us all about what your journey?
Um, for me, independence played a very big role, right? I don't know if it does for everybody, but I did work for companies. I worked for Pepsi Cola. I worked for Gray Advertising. I did have jobs. But the mere fact that I was independent at some point in my career um, put me out there and said, on my own, and said, how can I do this? And I really had to dig deep. I had to dig deep. I had to figure out the way forward. And I still feel that today, that independence plays a big role. Whatever you do, you could be independent in a job, but find something that you can do somewhat independently, even in a job situation that you can own, that you can do yourself, that you can say, that's got my fingerprints on it. And put yourself out there to create to create something that's so great, that's so important, that it makes yourself proud. Yes, your boss is happy and so is happy and the client may be happy, but make yourself proud in the end because that will take you much further than anything else.
Wonderful, Ella. So nice to have you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dory. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Pitchable Story. Whether you're looking to reach media outlets, investors, or the public, I'm here to help you transform your expertise into compelling narratives that get noticed. If you enjoyed today's insights, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It helps others find our show. Visit DorieKlissas.com to learn more about crafting pitchable stories, creating differentiating campaigns, and building media relationships that stick. You can also email me to book a free 15-minute consultation to discuss how we can help elevate your organization's message. Until next time, I'm Dorie Klissas.